Hello, welcome to the Great Revel. I'm your host Bosseidon, and this week we had quite a bit of spice in the weekend challenges. I've also been playing Burn with Flame Rift. Now I have first-hand experience with the card, so I also want to talk about that. So that's the plan for today. But first, let's talk about the modern challenges. I always like to look at modern challenges because they're this event that happens every weekend. They're quite competitive, and you can get a lot of information from what is popular and what is not, what is good, what is not. So yeah, I want to look more specifically at top 8s, and I know that looking at top 8 isn't the best way to understand what the current meta is, but talking about top 32 is way too much. So I kind of want to focus on the decks that finished well, which I honestly think this is something that kind of pisses me off. But I think that a deck doing well isn't necessarily a sign that the deck is very good. Deck strength isn't the only thing that plays a part in these. I'm talking, of course, about deck pilots. I think that a lot of players don't value themselves enough. Like, if you win a challenge with a deck, doesn't necessarily mean that the deck is quote unquote cracked, like a lot of people like to say. It might just mean that you're a good pilot. And you see this a lot nowadays, where someone makes a list or picks up a list, works on it a little bit, and then goes on claiming that the list is broken, that some cards are broken, that this and that is broken, and it's honestly a bit infuriating because they're removing themselves out of the equation, and why would they? Like, if you make good results with the deck, you need to understand that most of it is on you. Decks don't run themselves. Even the simplest decks to pilot have a lot of space to make mistakes and lose games because of it. All right, so onto the Saturday challenge. It was won by Azorius Ephemerate, a Yorion list, and God, I hate Yorion lists. Like, you cannot convince me, you absolutely cannot convince me that increasing your deck size by 33%, if I'm not bad at math, which I am, is a good idea. Lots of cards have unique effects, and you can play more than 4, meaning that you are effectively reducing consistency by quite a bit. And the argument here is that, okay, but because you consistently have Yorion, when you drop Yorion, you get your consistency back. But honestly, like, people a lot of times say that Modern's a very fast format, it's over by turn 4, and that's not true. That's not true at all. If you actually play the format and understand the format, you know that really only happens when both players aren't trying to interact with each other. However, I do think that the first turns of the game are the most important, and being inconsistent in those first turns, where you will not have access to Yorion or the consistency it gives the deck, you're just making your life harder against any deck that wants to go fast. That being said, congrats to this player winning on a Yorion list. Also, maybe right now is the best time to play Yorion, because, to be honest, a lot of lists are still dirtling around new concepts, so, lack of consistency is global. So it's actually kind of ironic that Yorion won this one. It's like everyone's being inconsistent, but Yorion is the most inconsistent because it's inconsistent by design, and it won. That's quite ironic. But honestly, I don't love the deck list. I have no way of sharing deck lists in this format, in this content format. However, they are available publicly. A little shout out to Bamzing, which is a person that's a modern player and usually organizes results. Give them a follow on Twitter, where they'll typically post results when they come out. You can also just go to Wizards website. If you Google MTGO deck lists, you go to a page where every event is there for you to view deck lists. Either way, I'm not super in love with this deck list. It has a lot of weird choices, again, because trying to fill 80 cards with good cards ain't easy. I still don't love that this deck is playing... Skyclave Apparition is so strong, it's only playing 3. In an 80 card deck list, that's gotta be like a hard one to find. Either way, I won't dwell on this too much. I'd personally cut the deck list to 60 and just keep the good cards. Like, God. Watcher for Tomorrow isn't an amazing card, let's be real. I don't know, I'm just not in love with it. But honestly, I'm very interested because this is the first weekend after Modern Horizons 2 was released. I will be talking about interesting decks that could be spawned. Some I already have. But I also think that Azorius Taxes could be a really strong deck to exist. You have Rishadan Port now. Sure, it dies to removal, blah, blah, blah. But it's a really strong card to tax your opponents. I think it also might be the missing piece that you need to drop Leonin Arbiter. I genuinely do not think that Leonin Arbiter plus Ghost Quarter is nearly strong enough to deserve a spot in the deck. Like, it's because okay, here's why I don't think that, and this is gonna be irrelevant for the rest of the podcast. So I'm just gonna mention it here. You cannot evaluate a card by how well it does with a second card. Because what's gonna happen is that when you don't have both cards, they're gonna suck. That's why you have to evaluate each card individually. And if they do have that broken synergy, then it's worth to include. Leonin Arbiter on its own shuts down fetch lands. Okay, that's okay. That's a taxing effect that might deserve a spot. The fact that you can pay to ignore it means that it might not really be that disruptive. However, it is taxes, not prison, I guess. So yeah, that effect's kind of cool. I will say that Modern is a weird place. That taxing effect barely seems worth it, to be honest, because that comes down on turn 2, and if you're on the play, then Leonin Arbiter God, I hate this argument, but let's be real. It's probably not going to live long enough. No, actually, I don't want to base myself off of that argument, because if that argument's to be taken seriously, then every card's bad. I just mean that there are a lot of non-fetch lands, and sure, you might have a gotcha moment in game 1, but I don't think that it's a good, it's not a super good strategy to try and choke your opponent on mana by taxing their fetch lands, which most decks don't even play that many. Like they play some, but not to a degree where taxing them would be super strong. Field of Ruin and Ghost Quarter. Field of Ruin is definitely the better card, I think, or rather the better main board card, because it hits specific lands that are annoying, like Tron lands and Amulet Titan lands. However, hitting them on from turn 3 going forward is not amazing, because it's the same issue as Blood Moon for red decks. If it's not working in 100% of the games, then it's not that much of a silver bullet. And because Tron gets online before turn 3, Amulet Titan can deploy the big boy by turn 3. So if you're on the draw, then that's not really a great deck. Ghost Quarter is much more focused, but also this isn't Legacy where you need 2 mana to function, and you can just then start wastelanding people. Ghost Quarter also doesn't wasteland them. It gives them a land back. Decks play a lot of basics. or at least enough to make Ghost Quarter not amazing. So I think that those two cards on their own aren't strong enough to warrant inclusion. Sure, if you have a land and arbiter and a god, this is starting to sound like a Taxes podcast. It's not. I'm just going off on a tangent because this is something that I've thought about quite a bit, and I hate that Taxes is always playing this 2-card duo that I just don't think is good enough. And now with Bosseidon port, you can maybe pivot to blue. You can then play fetch lands. You have access to you have access to Teferi, which I think is a very strong card in a tax like shell. You now have counter spell, at least for your sideboard. And you have spreading seas for those matchups, not main board, but in the sideboard for those matchups where you might want to disrupt mana bases quickly. I don't know, it gains a lot of cool tools. You also get Meddling Mage. Just overall, I think that you also get Spell Queller, which is a very cool. I think it could be considered a tax card because it's a creature, so it doesn't get taxed by Thalia, and it blanks one removal spell most likely, or at least taxes it. I don't know. I just think that Spell Queller, Bosseidon port, Teferi, and Meddling Mage are so good that going to blue might just be worth it now. You also should be playing Giver of Runes, by the way. Card is very good. So with Giver, Bosseidon port, and Aether Vial, you now have a lot of strong early plays. Meaning that you know how when you play against taxes, turn 1 they say planes go, and you put pressure, and turn 2 they say planes, and then they play a land and arbiter, and they say, cool, I'm gonna keep putting pressure on you because you're just playing nonsense. So yeah, sorry about that tangent. I just think that Azorius Taxes could be something to look into. All right, let's move on. Let's move on with the actual top 8. Then humans got second, playing 4 Shardless Agent, which, yeah, pretty cool. It's a human, and it cascades into some good cards. It cascades into Image. Notably, if it cascades into Image and you don't have any other creature, then it doesn't work. So that could be something. But I don't think that not playing a card because it has one not amazing interaction should be something you should do. You should play those if they're strong cards, and these both definitely are. You can also cascade into Meddling Mage, Kitesail Freebooter, Champion of the Parish. The worst hits are obviously Yarak and Aether Vial, and even those aren't that awful. I mean, a late game Aether Vial could be not amazing, but a late game Noble Yarak still does things because of the Exalted. Can also cascade into Talis Lieutenant, and I think the most important thing is that it can cascade into hate pieces, because from the side you're definitely bringing stuff like Auriok Champion, now Sanctifier Anvek, which I think is one of the best hate cards they've printed in quite a while. You're usually bringing 2-drops as hate cards, and cascading into them can be very strong. This list that I'm looking at is playing 3 Core Firewalker in the sideboard, and 2 Chalice of the Void, and 2 Blight Beetle. 3 Deputy... Okay. I don't know. The main board of this list looks very good. I'm gonna say that right now. The sideboard is a complete disaster. Complete disaster. Not playing Sanctifier, not playing Auriok Champion, which I think is better than Core against everything, maybe barring Burn. And even then, in humans, Auriok's probably better. Deputy, which is worse than Skyglaive Aberration. God. Yeah, it's playing Damping Sphere, which, doesn't work with your Shardless Agent. Like Thalia works because it's non-creatures. Damping Sphere doesn't work. However, you're probably siding out Shardless Agent when you're playing Damping Sphere. Either way, very interesting list. I think the main board is very solid. Is it Oh, it's not playing the new human that, what's it, Imperial Recruiter, I think. Which is fine. I think the 3 mana slot's quite filled in humans, but yeah, I like the main board. I think the sideboard's very weak. Then we have Amulet Titan playing Urza Saga, and I will be talking about Urza Saga a bit more later. A lot of people are looking at the card and claiming that the card is broken. I think the card is very good. I think like, not just looking at lists and saying, their card is broken. I think the reason that, the people that think about deck lists before they build them, I think the reason that people are claiming that Urza Saga is very good is because it's a land that has the ability to make 2 bodies and it tutors something. So it's a free 3 for 0, basically. Because it's a land you play, so it's, uncounterable, and then it can make up to 2 bodies and tutor something, which I'm assuming you will use. So this card, that's why this card is very strong. The reason people are claiming it's broken is because, people are excited, they're brewing around it, they're playing it, and with lots of people playing it and brewing around it, obviously it's gonna make results, and people are, excited about that. But people get a bit too excited. So when everybody's playing Urza Saga because the card, is obviously very good, and people are interested to brew with it because it gives decks that little toolbox aspect, which a lot of people love to brew around. So it's making more results than other new cards. And that's exciting, but people get, in a tizzy and think, oh no, this card must be broken. Everyone's playing it. Not sure if the card is broken. The card is very good. Again, value on a land. We've seen again and again that's very hard to balance. Remember Field of the Dead? I remember when Field of the Dead came out, it wasn't like a card that people thought would be very good. I remember Amulet players immediately included it because, it's kind of free there. But the card was never really seen as too good. Until it was, of course. Because, here's the thing. Field of the Dead reads like a very bad card. It's slow, it comes in tapped, it makes colorless mana. But that's the thing. It's a bad land, as a land, but it's a very hard to interact with way to win the game. Which you don't even need to, consider too much when you're playing it. It's like, oh, there's an opening here, gonna play it. They are not gonna interact with it. I still have all my mana up to interact with them. And so, Field of the Dead read like a bad card, but even that bad card was broken. So that's how hard it is to balance win cons on lands and value on lands. I'm not sure if this is definitely the same thing. The card doesn't read like it's amazing. Like, it makes some bodies, it tutors something that's low impact later in the game. But it's definitely much better than it reads because it's a land. And I think that's very relevant. But yeah, it's a shoo-in in Amulet. I thought when the card was revealed, I remember talking with an Amulet player that's a friend of mine, and I remember telling him, this looks very good, right? You just play 4 of these and you have 8 Amulets. And when I don't remember what he thought when he saw the card. I remember that after a while, he was excited, and now he's sure it's gonna get banned. I think he thinks that it's gonna get banned. We'll have to wait and see. For example, I don't think this is gonna come up in the, is it Saturday challenge? No, it's a Sunday challenge. A blue-white control list playing Urza Saga appeared, and people are like, "Oh, dude, controls already playing Urza Saga card must be absolutely broken, right?" No, it's one dude that saw the card and thought, "Huh, this card is interesting. I'm a brew a deck that I know how to play. include this card, include some cards that synergize with this card. See how I do. Made top 8. It's a very good player, so it's not that surprising. So don't take hard conclusions from that. Either way, 4th place we have. What's this? Teamer Rhinos. So it's a Cascade deck, and this one's very interesting because the issue with Cascade decks in the past, cascading into Crashing Footfalls, was that one, you didn't really have that many good 3-mana Cascaders. You had what's it called, Violent Outburst, which is bad, and you had no other cards in color of Teamer. And why Teamer? Because actually you could just play Jund. But here's the thing. The issue with this is that you absolutely want to not have cards that cost 1 or 2. We had Bone Crusher Giant, we had Brazen Borrower, now we have Fire Ice, which is another interactive piece that you can cast early, but its mana value isn't under 3. So this deck got quite a bit stronger. It's a very interesting one. I think it's just the Shardless Agent and Fire Ice simply solidified the deck as an option to play. I still think that maybe because Teferi, Time Reveler, just shuts down this deck quite a bit. Hence why it's probably playing 4 Brazen Baron, 4 Force of Negation. But I do think that this deck is a very valid option. At least right now. I don't know how the meta will evolve, but this deck seems like a very valid option. Actually, I'm good at planning. I should be talking about my burn point of view. So very quickly, Azorius Taxes, it can be a hard matchup for burn, but you shouldn't be worried about it because, actually, I'm gonna talk about normal taxes, not Yorion taxes, because obviously there you have the edge because they're playing an inconsistent deck, and your key aspect as a burn deck is consistency, so you should win on that axis. Normal taxes can be quite hard. This is where I like the new Strixhaven card, Strict Proctor, because you can really hit their deck quite well. I still think this is a matchup that needs to be erased because you kinda can't go long. They have a lot of pieces that go long very well. Batterskull being the biggest one because they can just, fetch Batterskull even if you kill Sunforge Mystic, which you kinda always should. Then they're in a place where they can just bounce it back and forth to always have something to equip it in. So unless you kill it, they can go long very well. So it is a race. And then for the second place, Humans, pretty much same thing, different name. Hard matchup, you want to run, but also sometimes you need to kill things, which is a bit awkward. It's a race, and anti-ETBs such as Hushbringer and Strict Proctor are very good. Amulet Titan, bad matchup. Strict Proctor, very good in this matchup. I'll plug myself a little bit here. In my latest stream, which is available on my YouTube, I played against Amulet. I brought in Strict Proctor. I played 2, and I just ran away with the game. It was tight. I'm not gonna lie, it was very tight. I lived at 1. I won the game at 1 life, and it could have gone either way. But here's the thing. Without those Strict Proctor, I would be dead by turn 3. That it's as simple as that. Strict Proctor just gave me the possibility of winning, which I did. And now, yes, the Teamer one, which I was talking about. This matchup isn't really easy. An early Crashing Footfalls is very strong. They have interaction. They have Force of Negation, which can be quite strong when you're trying to race. This version is playing 4 Kitchen Finks in the side, which I think is wrong. I don't think that life gain is really strong right now in the meta. There's not a lot of red aggro. Like there's some burn players around. I mean, in leagues, I think there's a little bit more burn than it used to before Modern Horizons 2. That's normal. Burn did get an upgrade. But I think to win this matchup, you have two ways, which is you race against them because they're casting Charlotte's Agent by turn 3 to make, you know, some 4/4s, which you should be able to race, but also you can play the which I don't really love, but you could play the what's it called? Roiling Vortex game, where you play it and you go, haha, you cannot play free spells anymore, or else you're definitely gonna lose. However, that does lose to Force of Negation and Brazen Borrower, so maybe I'm not the biggest fan of that deck, actually. In theory, it sounds very good, but they have answer. They have natural answer for it. Like it's not like a 2 or 3 of sideboard card, it's 8 mainboard cards, so maybe that's not the correct play. Actually, now that I actually think about it, yeah, don't bring Roiling Vortex against this one, just race. Just go hard. Go hard and go fast. Then we have Living End. Actually, 5th, 6th, and 7th were all Living End. Again, getting a Cascader in quote-unquote in color, because you can now play Tamer. Before that, I had to play 4 colors, which was always very awkward for the mana base. Now you can play a better mana base. This deck just got a straight upgrade with Charlotte's Agent. I think the deck is good. I definitely think that the deck is now at a level where it can be competitive. However, I do think that first and foremost, Blood Moon still wrecks this deck. For some reason, their mana base is not very anti-Blood Moon. I genuinely don't understand why. I genuinely don't understand why we're not just playing a heavy fetch. Well, actually, yeah, I think there's a reason for that, right? No, wait, this is playing seven fetch lands. I think I've heard about that. Like, you shouldn't play too many fetch lands in your Living End deck because you don't wanna up the chances of drawing Living End. I don't know. I don't know if that's a really good argument. Like, if playing fetch lands for deck thinning isn't an argument, which it isn't, then playing less to avoid thinning the deck also isn't an argument. So yeah, I think that they should play a better mana base, because here's the thing: they play 1 forest and 1 island. If you moon them early, they probably lose the game. Whereas if they play the fetch land heavier mana base with some more basics, then there's a chance that Blood Moon would suddenly not be a bad matchup, which I genuinely think it is. I've definitely won my fair share against Living End because of Blood Moon. So yeah, from the side of Burn, this one can be kind of hard. Like, I think it's very hard to win this game if they go turn 1 cycle, turn 2 cycle, turn 3 Living End, and get like they get lethal power on the board. Can be very hard to win. Because they play Force of Negation, Brazen Borrower naturally. I do think that maybe playing Roiling Vortex isn't the most robust plan against this deck. Not entirely sure. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I'm actually leaning towards not. Just try and race, because you get 4 turns where they are barely interacting with you. They do have 4 Force of Negation, but they're barely interacting with you. And if they have to Brazen Borrow early, they typically don't have that much power, and you just gain a turn. So maybe just trying to race is the correct approach here. They do play Farley Line of Sanctity in the sideboard, which is very unfortunate. Especially that now I think that Rip Apart might not be in its best spot, because there are a lot of artifact decks running around because of Urza Saga, and I think that Smash Smithereens might be back on the menu. Then in 8th place we had Hammer Time. Again, playing 4 Urza Saga. And this was the deck. I think I mentioned this. God, I hope I mentioned this in an earlier podcast episode, right? I think that Urza Saga would be a shoo-in in Hammer Time because it does 2 things that the deck wants. Aside from mana. It makes creatures to hold hammers, and it fetches hammers. It's very good. So yeah, I think it's a shoo-in. Yeah, it also playing Esper Sentinel, which is an artifact. Also a human, I think. Either way. Oh, that's another card for Texas to play, by the way. Esper Sentinel, very good card. But yeah, deck didn't really get anything that amazing. I think because here's the thing. I think Urza Saga is cute here, but it's not the card that's pushing this deck forward. What's pushing this deck forward is that most of the decks that I mentioned earlier barely try to interact like in a strong way. Before Modern Horizons 2, trying to play Hammer Time was hard because you play creature and then prowess kills it. You play a creature and control that's stacking against prowess and has tons of removal also kills it. Now, for some reason, people aren't playing prowess. Well, not for some reason. Like, the deck didn't get anything new. I'm talking about Izzet prowess. The deck didn't get anything new. So it makes sense that people wouldn't be too excited to pick it up again. At least in the first days of the new set, where people are just happy to be brewing with new cards. So that was the Saturday challenge. Quite healthy. 3 copies of Living End is quite a little bit, but it's also like, it's one of the first decks to come from the new set because, the power of Shardless Agent, and it was a pretty easy deck to include it in, and you didn't need to brew a lot, you didn't need to think a lot, just show in those Shardless Agents and just play. And obviously with not a lot of graveyard hate, because why would you, since it's a new meta and graveyard plays shouldn't be that relevant. The set also got some cool new anti-graveyard cards. So yeah, bringing Living End seemed like a good choice here. Then on Sunday, it was won by, very surprisingly, Affinity. Now that's actually, I shouldn't call it Affinity. I'm sorry, Affinity players. It was actually Ardent Scales. I got excited. They are 2 different decks. And Ardent Scales won. Ardent Scales got some new toys. But honestly, I think the best toys for Ardent Scales came in Ikoria. But because Ikoria also brought companions and people were much more excited about companions, no one really tried this out until it got another new toy in, Artifact Lands and now Urza Saga and Zabaz, the legendary Arcbound Ravager knockoff. Yeah, this deck honestly has been looking very good since the Ozolith was printed in Ikoria. I always thought it was weird. Nobody was really playing with it. Post all the bannings that needed to happen. But it also kind of makes sense. I doubt this deck could have a very strong game against removal heavy metas, which, we went into because of Heliod. Everyone needed removal to compete with them, and then Prowess, everyone needed removal to compete with them. And Prowess itself had a lot of removal, so maybe that's why this deck never had a chance to shine. So this and the other ones that are including Urza Saga, because here's the thing, Urza Saga made a lot of results this weekend, so you're bound to play against Urza Saga in your daily life now. Hence why I think that Smash the Smithereens could be a good option. Decks are maybe leaning more towards playing some artifacts, and Smash Smithereens. If Smash the Smithereens has lots of targets, it's amazing. The card's amazing. The issue that I had with the cards that the artifact decks that existed didn't have a lot of artifacts to begin with, so it didn't have that many targets. Hence why I was keen on cutting it for Rip Apart. which was wider. Also hit creatures and hit, Dryad, which I think is the biggest win from that card. But this might be a reason to start playing Smash Smithereens again. This matchup isn't that hard. You can realistically always hold up some form of interaction to keep them from going off. They're also not amazingly fast, so you can usually race them. Yeah. Then in second place, we had Team of Rhinos again. Same old. Cheap interaction that doesn't get hit with Cascade's very cool in Bone Crusher Giant and Fire Ice. So yeah, this deck does play Leyline of Sanctity. Here's the thing. This and Living End both play Leyline of Sanctity, and they both made good results. So I'm kind of not sure how to consider this going into my sideboard. Because games 2 and 3, there's a possibility that you can't race them because they just open with Leyline. Although here's the thing. Flame Rift goes around Leyline, which I think it's quite amazing. Then in third, we had Nivtolite. Not a lot of new cards, just general Ferrous Rockrick, which I genuinely think is just a shoe-in. The deck didn't really have any Boros cards, aside from Lightning Helix, so we now have this one. And it dodges the most common removal of the format, so you're bound to have a young Pyromancer that's on steroids. And his tokens are also on steroids, so that's pretty cool. As a burn player, this matchup's kind of not amazing. They do play 3 Helix or 4 Helix from time to time, and 4 Kayasgal, which is very annoying. And Omnath, which is just game over. This isn't an amazing matchup, folks. However, their mana base is straight garbage. They are playing 5 color. They're also playing 4 Ren and 6, which is easily one of the most useless cards against us. So that's always cool. So yeah, there's a chance that you just run them over because they're fetching a lot, they're playing tap lands, and you're just fast. And then in fourth place we had Golgari Yawgmoth. Not really much to point here. I mean, they did get a Hierarch in colors because it gives Golgari colors, which I think is cool. Greased is also very cool because you can evolve. You can Eldritch Evolution and Court of Calling a Planeswalker. That's pretty cool. And honestly, Greased the Walker is very good. He upticks for tokens, which is cute because it's a 3-mana walker that protects itself. But also the downtick is very good. It's a downtick removal on a 3-mana walker that's not bad like Liliana. Because you actually get to choose what you want to remove, so that's very cool. Yeah, this deck's honestly very cool. I really like this deck. Not really sure why it never picked up. Maybe, again, all of these creature heavy decks that are popping up now always had a reason to not exist, because if you're playing tons of creatures and being cute with them, you're vulnerable to A, removal, and B, combos. So Heliod and Prowess were the big dogs before all this. Modern Horizons 2, Madness. So it makes sense that all these cute creature decks weren't appearing. From the burn perspective, this matchup is kind of easy. They don't have that many draws that scare us. Even the life gain draws aren't that scary because they're very killable, and they do be going off comboing early. But if you can basically get them low enough that they can't really combo, because unless they have one of their life gain cards alive, they aren't going off for infinite damage, and if you're ahead of them in the damage race, then they can finish you off with their combo. So I don't think it's a bad matchup. I do think that it's one that gains a lot from, Rest in Peace, because then they just can't go off. They do play answers in the side, but that's the age-old debate. You play answers to them, they play answers to your answers. Whichever sticks first and for most time wins, usually. And then we had... here's where the spice really begins. So, and I hope I can pronounce this right. So, Asmorano Mardica Destina Kuldakar is a very strong card. I was very high on it when it was revealed. A 1-mana 3/3 that fetches you a somewhat useful card. More so if you build your deck around making that card useful, which is the Underworld Cookbook. Is a very good card. In a format where Seasoned Pyromancer is a thing, where Street Wraith was a thing, even where Bloodbraid Elf is a thing. I think that the card is very good. I'm just gonna call her Asmo from now on. But essentially, it's a very good card. And people have been, really excited about this card and just brewing around it. They've been making food decks, they've been making Vengevine decks, they've been making Hollow-One decks, they've been making Feasting Troll King decks. Honestly, the Hollow-One's kind of annoying because when it goes off hard. But I think that lists, because here's the issue with Hollow-One. People get really excited about brewing Hollow-One, then they play a couple of games and they remember why Hollow-One doesn't see too much play. If you're pressing the random button in Burning Inquiry and Goblin Lore, you're gonna lose a very relevant amount of games to those effects. So I do think that those random decks aren't really amazing. Sure, it's fun when it works. When it doesn't, you feel powerless because, again, you're pressing the random button, and when it doesn't hit, it feels awful because you feel like you didn't lose for anything other than yourself. And now people have been making these more value-oriented food decks. Also playing Urza Saga because you can fetch Witch's Oven. Then you have the Cat Oven combo, which honestly is quite good. Then you also have the Feasting Troll King to kind of get a big threat for free, because with 4 Asmo and 4 cookbooks you can get in the graveyard consistently and also make enough food, and Asmo also acts as removal. So it's a whole value engine. Honestly, as a burn player, I was more worried about this before they went into a value-oriented build. The Go Fast Hollow-One Vengevine builds are scary because it's either them or us, They try to go fast, and when they go fast, we are quite powerless. These types of build, sure, Cat Oven combo being playable, finally, which I think it's a very cool duo of cards, even though it might invalidate some strategies. But I do think that this deck is very cool. I think that Sanctifier kinda busts this deck wide open. I don't really have any answers to it. But also, I think that they're slow enough that we can just go under them. So I'm not too worried about it. Then we had the aforementioned Blue-White Control playing Urza Saga. And to accompany it, it was playing 1 Brainstone, because, fetching a 2-mana Brainstorm is good. 2 Expedition Map, for some reason. Probably to fix the mana, in case you needed to. And also 3 Mishra's Wobble, because a land that makes bodies and then cantrips for free, has its value. So this build was just made to give some decent value towards the Saga, alongside making the bodies. I think that's the ability that people were sleeping on for the longest. And well, because Field did help them realize that making bodies on a land is good. They are jumping on this one quite a bit faster. But yeah, you use your Urza Saga later in the game, you make some bodies, and you fetch a cantrip, and all is well. It's an interesting build. I'm not too convinced by it, but also here's why I think that Urza Saga might be broken. Well, I'm not sure, but or rather, okay, let me rephrase that. Here is the argument for claiming that Urza Saga is broken. This is free. You're just playing for Urza Saga, which, it's a colorless land, so you kind of don't treat it as a land. Although this list kind of does. That's not too relevant. It's a free inclusion, right? You just play this, you make bodies, it recycles itself with a cantrip, and you just keep on trucking. It's pretty free to include. Like, realistically speaking, it doesn't really place that many constraints on your deck building, which is why someone could claim this card is broken, because it's just free to include, and it adds a lot of value. Effectively, it's a 2 or a 3 for 0, which it's strong. It's strong. It's a very big. It's a lot of card advantage for one land. That's the issue here. But I do think that I've talked about counterspell not being that big of a deal. Like, sure, their mana leaks can be countered by flooding. Big whoop. Although Prismatic Ending has been really strong, I think. Being able to answer not only mana dorks in your white control deck, but also Utopia Sprawl, Aether Vial, Amulets. I think all of those are very strong, and then it scales to deal with this list is even playing a black source, even though it's not playing any black spells, precisely because your Prismatic Ending scaling into being able to remove stuff like Dryads, really any 3-drops that are very strong. Is very good for virtually no downside. Yeah, this list is very interesting. And I'm not convinced about Urza Saga here, but yeah, it is kind of free. From Burn's perspective, it's control. It's control where they have some awkward draws with like Urza Saga, or rather, like Brainstone and Expedition Map. So there's space to take advantage of their inconsistencies here. This list I'm looking at is playing Zuran Orb in the side, and that could be annoying, because if all their later land drops are casually gaining them 2 life, then it could be an issue. Not sure about how to beat this one. Obviously, Vortex is very good because you get to what's it called? Stone Rain them, Stain Roam them once, for free or for 1 mana, but you just can activate it on top of that. There's a world where you just choke them on mana because of that. I don't know how Zuranor performs there, to be honest. I need to play against this list to see how it goes. Then in 7th we had this one was surprising but welcome. We had Inverter, which wait. This list actually playing. Oh no, why did I think it was Inverter? Oh, because on Saturday challenges, Inverter actually made 9th place. Okay, let me look at the list actually. Just straight up Inverter from Pioneer, but playing 0 counter spells. That can't be right. Wow. Either way, Ad Nauseam made 7th, which is understandable. Let's be real, it's understandable. People aren't playing interaction, namely, people aren't playing black discard spells. because the whole Grief plus Ephemerate thing was a big bust. People were so excited about Grief plus Ephemerate. Everyone was, screaming ban, it's gonna be too strong. Turns out, Grief by itself isn't amazing in a format where you kind of can take advantage of it. The reason why Unmask is so good in Legacy is because you cast Unmask for free and then win the game off of that, because, you have very, very strong what was it? Oh, you have very strong, you have Dark Ritual, you have Lotus Petal, you have very strong ways of winning the game on the spot if you look at her hand and don't see interaction, or if they use interaction on your Unmask. In Modern, however, going for a turn 1 0, or rather, going for a turn 1 2 for 1 isn't amazing. If you Ephemerate, you go for 3 for 3, which also isn't that amazing, honestly. And having a lot of blink effects in your deck makes for a very poor top decks. So that's why that deck hasn't picked up yet. Because, yes, the explosive openings are cute, but not really game-winning, and then the rest of your deck just doesn't work that well. And so because Black Discard is kind of missing, we have Ad Nauseam. Also because, red aggro and generally red is missing from these tops. Ad Nauseam does gain some leeway to go off. And maybe not surprisingly, the monkey ban kind of didn't hit this deck too much. Oh, they're also playing Profane Tutor. What's okay. Profane Tutor is 2, right? Let me just make sure. It's a spend 2, right? Because so this card is very good for the deck. Wow, actually, you tutor on 2 and then go off on 4. Yeah, this is very good. This is very good for the deck. And then in 8th, from the burn perspective, you know that this matchup is awful. You know that this matchup is quite awful. Between them being fast, them playing Phyrexian Unlife, and then playing Leyline of Sanctity, you kind of don't have too much space to win, realistically. I'm not even sure what you could do to win here, to be honest. Aside from just being fast and praying they aren't too consistent. But Ad Nauseam is a very poor matchup. And then in 8th place we had Eldrazi Tron. No new cards. Just plain old Eldrazi Tron. Taking advantage of people playing new decks. Makes sense. Honestly, this matchup is bad for us, but probably not worse than Amuletite in my opinion. Definitely not worse than Ad Nauseam. I'd put those at worse. So nothing too much to comment here. Overall, pretty cool weekend results. And this is going to be a transition to my next one. Honestly, don't get worried about anything. Don't listen to, because there are a lot of content creators that are always overhyping things, but that's how they sell their fish. Are you ever gonna click a video that says, "Hey, I built this deck. It's kind of good. I'm working on it. Come watch." Or are you gonna click on a video that says, "I completely broke Modern. This deck is busted. It needs to be banned." Of course, you're gonna watch the video that causes panic when you read the title. So don't take those overhypings to heart. Just don't. Look at results. Play what you want to play. It's still good. Honestly, I can say that. Just play what you like to play. You're very likely to keep making results. Adapt to what people are trying, but don't be a fool. Don't get taken in by all the hype. Just don't get taken in by all the hype. So yeah, I don't think I have much more to say. The new food decks are interesting. I think Urza's Saga is very interesting. And I think it makes food scales and amulet better. So maybe plan to play against those. Cool thing is that because amulet now effectively is playing more artifacts because of Urza Saga, you can realistically bring in Smash the Smithereens, which was always a card that I'd advise you not to bring in against classic amulet, because yeah, they can still beat you without finding amulets. Like Dryad was the bigger issue, and now because they are playing more artifacts, there's the possibility that you just smash their artifacts and gain enough advantage from that to win. So yeah, so those are my thoughts on the weekend results. Again, please don't get taken by the overhyping of things. Just remember, and I'm going to use the most recent examples I have. Example 1, yeah, people were overhyping Grief so much, and it's seen zero play. And also, people were overhyping Ravagan, the monkey, the red 1-drop. People were just overhyping it so much, so goddamn much. 0 copies in both top 8s. And card is very likely to not play anything other than Obosh. Maybe some Ponza play, because it's another way to get a turn 2 moon down. If your opponent isn't interacting with you. But either way, card was talked about as the second coming of something, of some weird entity, and now it's not that. It's definitely not that. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the current meta, if we can even call this the current situation, that because there really isn't a meta. And with that, I have been playing Burn with Flame Rift. I have to say, I love Flame Rift. When the card was revealed, I remember someone was mentioning on the Discord for quite a while, I want Flame Rift. They could print Flame Rift into Modern. The card isn't too strong. And I was like, yes, the card isn't too strong. The card would be played by us, but I don't see it happening, honestly, because why would they? It's realistically speaking, it's not an interesting card. It's on the level of Lava Spike, which is like, hey, there's this card that does one thing. So yeah, I do think that Flame Rift's very interesting for us and for Shadow, potentially. But in our case, I've been loving the card. It's just so good. Having more Boros Charms in most games is just amazing. You just get there more consistently. I've been enjoying the Eidolon cut, because cutting a 2-drop for a 2-drop makes sense to me, and cutting a self-damaging 2-drop for a self-damaging 2-drop made even more sense to me, and because Eidolon was already not amazing, because people were playing a lot of board presence, then Eidolon kind of didn't do enough. A lot of board presence did a lot of removal. Now there isn't that much removal, so Eidolon might be in a good spot again. There is still some board presence, however, I do think that I'll have to cook up a list. I might stream this week a list that I enjoy, but I have lots of things to consider. But yeah, that's my thought on Flame Rift. I still haven't tested Sanctifier on Vec because, again, the graveyard decks that exist are playing blue, and there's really no Jund-like black mid-range decks going around for me to test it on. So I haven't been playing it. So yeah, about Modern Horizons 2 cards, that's it. I've mentioned this earlier. I might think about bringing Smash the Smithereens back into the mix. However, I during this podcast, looking at all the lists, I saw a lot of Ley Lines of Sanctity. So maybe I have to think about that. I'd hate to lose against Leyline of Sanctity again. That card's popular again for some reason. And not that I think it was relevant, because I don't think it was. There wasn't a lot of red, there wasn't a lot of black. No, might have been because of little lines. Actually, let me quickly glance at top 32s. Yeah, there's not really red aggro or black discard decks here. So I think that those ley lines were more of a preemptive strike on those. However, I will say, I think that because they are on these lists, people will play them, even if they're not amazing, so we do need to be ready for them. Which is annoying, to say the least, but, you're playing Burn, people don't like you, people don't like your deck choice at least, and they will respect it more than they should. Especially now that, Prowess made no results this weekend, so people can finally, or rather, people can keep playing Life Gain, and because it beats Burn and Prowess isn't really there anymore, it's just gonna make them feel that it's actually working. Although I will say, bold prediction for next weekend: Prowess is gonna make a huge comeback. Because all lists that I saw on this top 32, or at least in the top 8. Would get smashed by a consistent Is That Prowess list. Those are my comments on this weekend's results and on the current state of Modern. I don't think there's much more that I want to talk about. There are definitely some lists that are being worked on. You have Enchantress, which would be annoying as fuck against us, because they have the freedom to play Solitary Confinement, but also they probably play a Leyline of Sanctity in the side, so it could get annoying. I'm not sure if Reanimator can get there. I've been playing around with the deck. It's very cool, very cute. But it's just so hard to get things done. Modern is because you can get legends with your Reanimator. What do I want to say? Oh, you aren't winning the game on the spot. That's the issue. And Modern is weirdly apt at dealing with big creatures. And I've noticed that when I was playing Incinerator a while back, Incinerator is very good, or rather, when Incinerator is good, it's very good, it wins games on the spot, yada yada yada. But the reason that the card isn't always good is because Modern is weirdly apt. Modern is very good at dealing with big creatures early on. I don't know why. Probably because Primeval Titan has been a Modern staple for a while, so people are kind of ready to play against it. But also probably because, Tron exists, and you kind of have to have a way to deal with big drops early on. So I'm not sure if Reanimator can cut it. And those two are the ones that I was interested in. Was there something else? I don't know. I've tested Enchantress. It's cool. It's quite cool. It gets the lock kind of fast. Maybe not fast enough for red aggro. We'll see. My final words will be: prepare to face artifacts, and prepare to face ley lines for the remainder of this week. And maybe Prowess will make a huge comeback next weekend, because not there means people won't prepare for it. Because people are like fish. If something doesn't make results in the previous weekend, they just don't prepare for it. So yeah. Either way, thank you very much for tuning in, and see you next time. Actually, no. If you enjoy the content, consider subbing to the YouTube channel. You can also follow me on Twitch, where I stream sometimes. I will announce when I'm streaming in the Discord and and on Twitter. But Twitch also notifies you if I go live, which is which is like any random day of the week at like midnight London time. So yeah, see you next time.